in the outline. This is something we've been thinking about doing for a few weeks. I want to dive into kind of like how you see the ACC Atlantic shaping up this year and how you kind of rank teams, how you think things will go down this year, where Florida State is, where Clemson, NC State, just kind of all of them. And the way I want to do this, we probably should have planned this better, and talked about it off air. But what I want to do is I want to go from 7th to 1st, and I want to see how many we haven't talked about this before. I was very intentional that I didn't want to talk about this before. I didn't want your notes. I didn't want to know how you ranked teams, but I want to start at 7. I think we're going to be on 7. I think we're probably going to be on 1, but we'll see how things shake out in the middle. We might not be out on 1. We'll see. But we'll see how things shake out in the middle and go from there. So 7th, I'll go first on 7. You can go first on 6. We'll alternate the rest of the way. 7th, I've got Syracuse coming in last this year in the ACC Atlantic.
Yeah, I mean I'd be surprised that they're going to win a game, but they have like 1-7 written all over them as far as conference play goes this year. Hopefully it's not us, because that'd be a bad loss.
If we lose to Syracuse, we are getting a new. You say that, but obviously, if you drop that game, but you go 7-1 in the conference, then you're fine. They've got a tough road. They've got Louisville to start out. They get that game at home, so maybe you it's actually a night game. Syracuse and Louisville on September 3rd, an 8 p.m. contest. The biggest reason is because nobody plays anybody week 1 in conference. And so that, is it's ACC network game, I'm sure, for an 8 p.m. in conference game. I think Cunningham's going to absolutely light them up. They're going to beat the heck out of them. They're, Virginia, tough one. NC State and Clemson in back-to-back weeks, really tough there. They go to Pittsburgh. We play them the next week. They go to Wake Forest and then Boston College. Maybe they can get that Boston College win at the very end of the year. I don't know. I think that's going to be really tough for them to come away with a win. But at most, I think Syracuse is getting 1 win. And so I've got them in 7th in the Atlantic. Is that their most likely win? Is Boston College? That's on the road, though, in November. So I don't know that's
their
tough. Most likely. I mean, maybe they find it. I mean, Louisville at home, first game of the year. Obviously, you'd think you're at full strength there. I don't know. Maybe they can upset Louisville. I don't see another. I don't know. Maybe at Wake. I think Wake's going to be good this year, though. So I don't know that that's a great chance. Their home games are against NC State and Virginia, us and Louisville. Maybe we're like the 3rd most likely team to lose to them. Just because on the road, late November. You don't know how injuries have kind of played into it by then. But, yeah, Syracuse 7th. Who you got 6th?
I think we just hit on it with their most likely or their best chance to win a game. For me, it's Boston College. And this is where I think the strength of the quarterbacks in the league really starts to show a little bit, because Jerkovich is not a bad quarterback at all. And obviously Zay Flowers is still there. So they do have some pieces. I think Boston College, they're probably your classic 5-7, 6-6 type team. They just don't have a whole lot of help around them. But yeah, I think they're going to be the second worst team. And again, Syracuse, I don't think anyone's really close to them.
Boston College is my 6th as well. Their schedule sets up where I think they have more likely chances at wins. I think they probably end up beating Syracuse. They lose to NC State, but they lose to Clemson. Probably lose to us, but they play Virginia Tech early in the year. I think they could get that win. They play Louisville. I think that's a little bit more realistic for them to match up with Louisville. They get that game at home. That game's in Boston to start out October. So yeah, I like Boston College 6th. They just lost a starting offensive lineman that was ranked really, really high and projected to be a top pick in the draft. And so that's going to hurt them this year. Jerkovich and Flowers are certainly, if they win games and when they win games this year, which they're out of conference isn't terrible. They play Rutgers, they play Maine. They do have Notre Dame this year, which is tough, but then they play UConn. So they should pick up 3 out of conference wins there. And then if they, like you said, if they can beat Syracuse, they beat a Virginia Tech, they beat a Louisville, they're getting to 6 wins. I could see that for sure. But yeah, you're completely spot on. They're a 5-7 to 7-5 team. Somewhere in there, probably going to finish 6-6. They have Duke at home as well. I didn't mention that. So they should pick up if they beat Syracuse, Duke, and a Virginia Tech and win your 3 out of conference games and then upset anybody, look at just 7 wins. I like them for 6-6, 7-5. But yeah, I think they're probably 6th in the conference at this point. Like that's how I would kind of read them. The Duke win does kind of give them one where if they can upset somebody, they could maybe move up to 4th or 5th.
In the division, right?
In the division, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, not in the entire conference. All right, I'll go next. I've got 5th. I got Louisville here in 5th.
Okay.
I think that Malik Cunningham, and like you talked about, the strength of the quarterbacks in this conference. Yeah. Although my number 1 team, a little foreshadowing here, doesn't that maybe doesn't strike fear in anybody in the quarterback room. But yeah, I've got Louisville 5th. I think that the way that their schedule sets up, I think they're going to finish 5th. But it's close. What's tough about this is I think the teams from 3 to 5 to like 3 to 5, like 3, 4, and 5, you could put in any order on mine. Maybe even 6. I think there's a clear 1, there's a clear 7, and then 3 to 6, 3 to 5 is a little bit tougher. Could kind of go a couple of different ways. But I've got Louisville 5th. What about you? Who you got 5th?
Yeah, it's the middle tier of the league or of the division, right? Like you said, I think we're going to have the same team up top, then another one probably a tier above the rest. And then I think there's 3 teams lumped in here. Florida State, Wake Forest, and Louisville could all be interchanged, in my opinion. I'm putting Wake Forest here, actually. I know Sam Hartman's back, and people are really high on them right now. I don't know. I think, they're going to benefit from an extremely weak out-of-conference schedule like they always do. So I'll be really intrigued to see what they look like in ACC play, because we're not going to learn anything from them with their out of conference. Outside of it, maybe Army, they've been solid lately, but that's, I think, towards the middle of the season.
Liberty, anyway. The Liberty might go in there and do some work.
So. Well, Liberty could beat them, actually, yeah. But
if we still had
when they scheduled this game, it wasn't, when they scheduled Liberty, they didn't think they were getting a team that had been in the top 20 the past few years,
No, I agree. Their schedule, they should. And for all intent purposes, although, they play Vandy. They should be Vandy too. They should start out 3-0. Then it gets tough. Like they play Clemson and us in back-to-back weeks. Clemson's going to beat them. They have to come to Tallahassee. And so there's a great chance they start out 0-2 in the conference. Now, they could easily beat us, right? Like that. I don't think that game's a sure thing at all.
No, definitely not.
They have Boston College. They have Louisville. I think them and Louisville are on kind of the same plane, but they got to go to Louisville. Then they got to go to NC State the next weekend. So I just think their schedule kind of sets up tough. Now they do finish it off pretty nicely with Syracuse and Duke at the very end for Wake. So that should be 2 wins if they've made it through the season kind of unscathed and healthy. So yeah, but again, middle of the pack. I think they'll have a plus record in the conference, right? But it's going to be really close. They could be looking at 4-4, finishing 4th or 5th. So I had them 4th, right? You talked about having them 5th. Going back to Louisville's real quick, Louisville also has a tough schedule. Just, they start out with that game with Syracuse, like we talked about. They get Florida State at home. Then they go to BC, to Virginia. They got to play Pitt, who people are still high on, even with losing Pickett and Addison. You get Wake, who I think they're very close to. And then they have NC State and Clemson to finish off the year. Again, that just screams 4-4 to me. Like that's kind of where I see them. And essentially whoever wins that game head-to-head is who is going to come out on top. I've got Louisville 5th, Wake Forest 4th. Who's your 4th team?
So I have Louisville here.
Okay, so we just flipped these 2.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're going to probably have the same top 3 in order, I'm guessing now. But yeah, like I said, it's not me saying who's better, who's not. I don't know. But I like Malik Cunningham at the college level a little more than I like Sam Hartman, I think. And that might be an unpopular take if you go to like the draft gurus or whatnot. But and I think Louisville, I think they have a actual, the people, their fans care about their football program, right? So I think that does play into it when you actually have a real home atmosphere for their games. Again, I put them slightly ahead. And here's the thing. I think Wake Forest could have a better record than both Florida State and Louisville. but take losses to Florida State and Louisville because I think they're slightly behind those two. So yeah. I'm going Louisville here at 4.
Yeah, and I like that. I think that what's going to end up happening is these teams in this middle 3, right? Like I think we're pretty confident on 1, feel good about 2, feel pretty good about 6 and 7, but 2 through 5, right? Or 3 through 5, I'm sorry, 3, 4, and 5 could end up anyway. And it's really like if either team goes 2-0 against the other two, because they're all swing games, right? Florida State and Louisville, Louisville and Wake, Wake and Florida State, Wake and Louisville. Like those are all swing games that could go any way, any direction at all. And we'll just kind of have to see how they do, right? Like if Florida State goes 2-0 in those games, they're probably going to finish above them because, right, like they all have, everybody's got to play Clemson. Everybody gets to play Syracuse and Boston College, right? And so if you lose to the teams you're supposed to lose to, beat the teams you're supposed to beat, what happens in the middle of all of that, right? Florida State does have to play at Miami, which maybe makes their schedule slightly harder by having to play a little bit more of a quality opponent than Wake or Louisville does in their in their cross division. Louisville playing Virginia, Wake getting Duke. I mean, certainly Miami's better than both of those teams, and it is a rivalry. So that's tough, but it kind of matters what you do most against those two teams. Does that mean we both have Florida State at number 3?
I believe so. I think I think this is a year they could finish second. I'm not ready to put them ahead of NC State yet. But yeah, I have Florida State at 3rd. I think this is probably the most complete roster that Florida State's had, maybe going back to Jimbo's days. Obviously, we had the higher end talent like Cam Akers, Brian Burns, Tamarian Terry on recent teams, but I think this roster has the fewest holes and has a chance, especially if defense can play like I'm expecting them. I think Florida State has a chance to finish second, but I have them 3rd for right now.
Yeah, I like that call. I think that, when you look at Florida State's in-conference record, you've got 2 games that I would call really, really tough and probable losses, and that's going to NC State and then playing Clemson the very next week. If Florida State can find a way to win either one of those games, I do think they'll finish second in the conference. Maybe compete for the division, right? Or I'm sorry, finish second in the division, maybe even compete for it. But let's say those are 2 losses. Then I think you have 2 wins later in the year that are must wins, like absolute must wins. And that's in Syracuse and Georgia Tech. It's what they do in the other 4 games that really matters. They could lose any of those other 4 games. They could win any of those other 4 games. They are true. I wouldn't say that each one of them is a coin flip, but I'd say none of them have a greater than 60% chance of winning, and none of them have a greater than 60% chance of losing, right? Like I'd say they're all somewhere in that 40 to 60 split. I'd say you probably have because it's on the road, you probably have a 40 to 45% chance of beating Louisville. You probably have a 55 to 60% chance of beating Boston College. Then you look at Wake Forest. Well, that's at home. They're pretty good. It's probably 45 to 55 or like somewhere in that, or 55 to 50, somewhere in there. Same thing with Miami, right? That's probably 40 to 45% because they're at home. So I think that it's what is done in those other 4 games. I like Florida State against Wake Forest at home. I think it sets up really, really nicely that Florida State gets 2 weeks off to prepare for Louisville because you have the week 0 game. I'm not saying that 2 weeks off is the definite winner for Florida State, but I think that works out really, really well in Florida State's favor. The rivalry game against Miami is a complete coin flip. It could go either way. Then I like Florida State at home against Boston College. So if you go 3-1 in that, you finish 3rd in the division, right? Like that, to me, that's, you lose to Miami, but you win the other ones, or you lose to one of those other ones, but you beat Miami. You go 3-1 there, mix that with your 2-2 outside of it. You finish at 5-3. 5-3 is good enough for 3rd in this division, I believe, right? I think the other teams are going to go 5-3, 4-4. You could have a tiebreaker scenario there. If Florida State finishes 4th in the division because of a 5-3 tiebreaker and they lost head-to-head at Louisville, I'm not going to give them too much grief there. I think 5-3 is also, obviously, we'll spend a little bit more time on Florida State. I think 5-3 in the division is really good because I think they're going to beat Duquesne. I think they're going to beat Louisiana, and I think they're going to beat Florida. So that's 8 wins, right? You go 5-3 in the division, you're winning 8 games. And that doesn't even count the LSU game, that if you find a way to somehow, I'm wearing my purple today, if you find a way to somehow win against LSU, then you're looking at 9. I'm not predicting 9 wins, but I very easily see a path to 5 divisional wins. If you win 5 divisional games, you're probably getting to 8 wins overall, which I think is great. I think that's exactly where you need to be this year. You win 8 games going into a bowl game, win 9 with that. I don't think 9 matters much because most of the guys sign in recruiting before you get to 9 anyway. But yeah, I think 5 divisional wins is what you've got to get to this year. Obviously, you could drop a divisional game if you upset LSU. But yeah, I feel good about that 3rd place there for Florida State.
Yeah, and like you said, it's about who you beat, because out of conference, like you said, we have 2 pretty much gimmies, right, in Duquesne in Louisiana. I'm not ready to say for sure we're beating Florida yet, but in Tallahassee, Black Friday, I do like our chances there. Anthony Richardson, he's kind of like Jordan Travis.
It's over.
What's that?
That one's over. I'm saying it. Yeah. That's a win.
That's
like Duquesne.
But you also have a hotel booked in Charlotte. You also have a hotel booked in Charlotte right now. So.
Yeah, man. Why not? Where's the college football playoff this year? I need to book that.
What you do? You just did a week long in Charlotte. So if we don't get the ACC, maybe the Belk Bowl comes in that window of time. You just cancel the rest of the days.
Belk Bowl. I have an office in Charlotte, so I just they'll take care of it.
There you go. But yeah, I think. And honestly, it'd be somewhat disappointing not to finish, 3rd or better in the conference this year. Like you said, if it's a tiebreaker with Louisville in that game, you lost that close on the road. Okay, that's fine, but don't let a team like Syracuse upset you to knock you down to 4th or 5th in the conference or in the division this year. Got to get in that top 3, and NC State playing up there is tough. If we got them in Tallahassee again, I might have put us 2nd. But I'm just not ready to put us over NC State, knowing we have to play there and what that venue has done to us over the years.
NC State, I think their schedule sets up pretty favorably too. Getting us at home, their out of conference is pathetic. They play Eastern Carolina to start, Charleston Southern, Texas Tech, and Connecticut. They should really go into conference play with a 4-0 record, probably ranked around the top 10. That NC State Clemson game to start the conference schedule on October 1st should be a really, really good primetime matchup type game. Both teams should be going in. Yeah, pretty highly ranked. It should be close to a top 10 matchup if it's not. They get Clemson and they get Florida State. I think they lose to Clemson. I think they beat us. And so they start out 1-0, but then I really like them in almost every game after that. In fact, I mean, just on paper, I kind of like them to win each game going on. They get Syracuse on the road. I like them to win that. They get Virginia Tech with 2 weeks to prepare. Coming back home, that's a Thursday night game. I'm sorry. Let me take that back. October 27th, 2022. That is yeah, that's a Thursday night game in Raleigh. So you get your cross divisional opponent. Kind of a, I don't know, unlucky for Virginia Tech to have to go in there and play on a Thursday night. That spells, NC State win all the way. They get Wake Forest at home. Wake Forest could certainly upset them. I don't think that's, unreasonable. They do get 9 days off, 10 days off to prepare for that because they play on the Thursday night. So again, another little advantage for them getting Wake at home. They get Boston College the week after that. Obviously like them to beat BC. They do have to go on the road to Louisville. That could be a tricky one with the rivalry game against UNC the week after. Maybe a little bit of a look ahead. Cunningham could certainly upset them. I think I like NC State to win that one too. But even if they drop it, I think that's only their 2nd conference loss, leaving them 1 ahead of us. And I like UNC to finish it off. I think they'll beat UNC even though it's on the road in a rivalry game. So I like them to finish 2nd. I think they lose the head-to-head to Clemson, maybe drop 1 more along the way. Probably not to us, but if it could happen, you go in and upset NC State, then you're in good shape. I will say this too: without Jordan Travis last year, Florida State went into that 4th quarter only down a touchdown, took some lucky plays, took an onside kick early, but played pretty well in that game before it kind of got out of hand late. So I don't think NC State's leaps and bounds better than Florida State. Like Richie said, I think if that game was in Tallahassee, maybe we'd view it a little bit different. But until Florida State gets out there and starts beating people they need to beat, you go in and you upset LSU, you go in and you beat a Wake Forest, you go on the road and win at Louisville, then we'll talk about beating NC State. As of now, yeah, I think NC State's probably finishing 2nd in this division.
Yeah, and don't think it's going to come into anyone's surprise that, we both obviously have Clemson number one. NC State beat Clemson last year in overtime. I think Dabo, he is a good motivator of his team. His players do love him for the most part. For as goofy as that guy is, he can relate to those guys somehow. But yeah, they by far have the most talented roster in the conference. Obviously question marks at quarterback. That's what really kept them out of the playoff last year, because that was a team, you remember, they held Georgia to 10 points the first week of the season, and
7 of that was on a pick six.
Yeah. If they had a quarterback, I mean, that was a college football playoff roster. I do think the talent level is depleting in Clemson, which is good for the rest of us. We need them to come back down to earth. It'll be interesting to see what they look like without Venables calling the defense this year. I'm excited to see what Clemson does moving forward. I do think this is, they're the clear-cut best team in the conference this year. But I think next year there's a potential, if teams continue to grow, if Florida State continues to grow, that we may have a different team at number one next year. Because remember Florida, when they were coming off of that Urban Meyer, his last year, they had just signed the best recruiting class in history at the time, and everyone just assumed heading into the season top 5, and then they kind of just stunk. John Brantley wasn't what people thought he was going to be, and they just limped throughout the whole season. I'm hoping we're seeing that with Clemson right now, but they still do have a lot of talent.
Yeah. Their schedule gets Georgia Tech first game. Obviously, like them to go in and win that. I think that's on Labor Day. What a terrible Labor Day game. Absolute blowout incoming. They get a couple off weeks kind of with Furman and Louisiana Tech, and then they start out their home stretch on the road at Wake Forest. Wake could
potential
maybe mess around and upset them. Then they get NC State at home. Again, we were talking about that one. I expect both teams to be 4-0 going into that. But I do think that being in Death Valley, benefits them a ton, and they end up going and winning it. They get Boston College on the road and then head to Tallahassee. Certainly FSU could potentially be right in that game if fully healthy and play really well defensively. Obviously, if Clemson's offense is still kind of sputtering as it did last year, that's one that Florida State could be in. Don't know if they're good enough to pull the upset there, but we'll see kind of how games go. Obviously, they'll go on the road and they'll beat Syracuse. They get Notre Dame. Doesn't count. It's in Notre Dame, so that could be a really fun one just for Clemson in general, but doesn't affect the division or conference at all. They get Louisville at home after the Notre Dame game. Then they get Miami at home. I think Miami or Louisville, with their offenses and their quarterbacks, could upset Clemson. I just don't think it'll be enough to matter for the division. What we're saying at any of these games is Clemson, Wake Forest could upset them. NC State could upset them. Florida State could. Louisville could. Miami could.
6.5 over under conference wins.
Probably over. I'd probably go with 7 for them.
I think they're definitely going to drop one. I just don't know who's going to beat them, but I don't think they're going to.
Hopefully, it's in Tallahassee.
Yeah,
hopefully it's in Tallahassee.
I think the roster is capable of doing it. You just have to stay close, get to halftime, and enter the fourth quarter close. I mean, heck, Notre Dame, we were down by 18, and they came back and sent that to overtime. Now, you don't want to bank on that, obviously, but it's definitely not last year. Yeah, last year when we did the show. Yeah,
you led by 3 against Clemson last year.
And they should have won. But remember, heading into the season last year, this converson was not happening. We said,
would they minus 28?
Yeah,
we said, would they cover minus 28? And we were like, I'll take. I think we even said, I think I might have said, I'll take plus 28 on this. They're going to be up 7-0 at the end of the first half. Then they're going to be up 14-0. Then they'll probably outscore us by a touchdown in the third quarter. And that's it, right? They're going to get. So, I mean, last year they were up by 3 or 4 with 3 minutes to go, and if not for a stupid penalty that they called on Jermaine Johnson for throwing the football, and then just a bad late hit call. I mean, we gave them 30 yards of field position to start the drive. They started at midfield, and so, frustrating for sure. But I think Miami could go in there and upset them. I'm not going to predict that today. That's late November, but with their quarterback, and it all kind of rides on what quarterback play looks like for Clemson. If they can't move the ball, then any team could upset them. I think their defense is going to keep them in most games. I like Florida State's defense. If their quarterback play is not very good, Florida State's defense is going to hold them down and do pretty well. I think we'll do well against the run, but will the offense be able to do enough because their defense is still really, really talented. And it's the best defense we'll see all year, not close. And so, what can our offense do to keep us in the game. We're going to need some splash plays, if not for a miraculous kind of like tackle / stay up last year. And then Jermaine Johnson making a heck of a play for a sack, fumble, recovery, touchdown. We'd probably lose that game like 17-3, right? And it was nice to get back into it and have those couple of plays to make it seem like we were, we had a chance, and we did have a chance, but Clemson outplayed us. We just made a couple spectacular plays to get in it, but we're going to need something like that again. And, who kind of steps up and makes that play or has that big pick? Is it Robinson? Who is it? And keep us in it. But yeah, I think you'd be kind of crazy to pick anybody but Clemson until things kind of get going. We may get halfway through the season and they may drop a game to Wake and NC State and have 2 conference losses. And at that point, it's probably NC State's division.